Good morning. Welcome to West Valley Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Clyde Goins, and I want to welcome you here on this beautiful Sunday morning. I want to welcome everybody online that's online, and we've got a pretty full house tonight, today, fuller than normal, so which is wonderful because we have a lot of good information to go over today, so we're glad that everybody's here. So I am wanted to share with you, I'm just showing up with a lot of gratitude today. My love tank is definitely filled up. We had our retreat for our business retreat for the center this week, and we hosted it here, and Karen and I shared some classes together and watched the opening session and stuff. So all week long I've been fed with all of our great news and things that are going on around in all the communities. And then on Sunday we had Dining with the Dudes. So it's been a while since I've been able to make the Dining with the Dudes, and we actually had it here and had breakfast, and it was really wonderful fellowship, and I definitely do love that. So if you're a dude and you're not attending, you're missing out. So please come. It's the second Saturdays of the month, so please join us. And then third, and probably the most important thing, is that we're going to be giving our business meeting information update, and of course I'm responsible for the financial piece, which I love talking about money. But I just am showing up with a lot of gratitude, and I'm not going to say anything until I go over the numbers with you, but we have a really loving community, and so I am so grateful for that. So we come together every Sunday to remember our truth, that we're whole, perfect, and complete, just the way that we are. And so we come together to celebrate that and knowing that truth and listening to beautiful music and then being inspired by Reverend Karen's beautiful message. So that's what we're here to do today. So if you just sit back, relax, open yourself up, and listen to some really beautiful music and allow yourself to be fed by Reverend Karen with her beautiful message today. Thank you.
So just take a deep breath.
I will make a quiet place within my heart. I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
Be still, oh my soul, be still. Be still, oh my soul, be still. Be still and know.
I will make a quiet place within my mind. I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
I will make a quiet
quiet and stillness where our hearts are open wide, our minds are open, our very soul is open to the activity of spirit that lives and moves and has its being in, through, and as me, in, through, and as everyone, everywhere. And I know that that divine energy that courses through each and every one of us is that power which is in charge here in this day and in every day. I know that Reverend Karen's message is an exquisite demonstration of the divine moving to her and through her, coming to us and touching us. As always, the Bradfords lift our hearts and allow our soul to soar with their beautiful music. I know that this day, in this service and in the business meeting after, that it is a perfect idea in the mind of God. Therefore, it must demonstrate exactly in that manner. So I give thanks. I give thanks for everyone here. I give thanks for this glorious community. I give thanks for the truth that knowing that the universe always says yes. And so it is. This is from the Science of Mind textbook. Too much cannot be said against the belief that willpower is creative. The will is directive, but not creative. Will is the conscious directive power of the intellect, and as such has a very important place in the creative order. But in no case is it to be used as though it could force things to happen. Any idea of using the will to influence people is a mistake. If we agree that we can influence others by willpower, then we're also admitting that someone else with a greater power of will can influence us. There is no law of nature that works only one way, since all natural laws are impersonal. The temporary effects of willpower continue only so long as the will forces them to. They have no real life within themselves and must disintegrate as soon as the unnatural force is withdrawn. We do not create energy, we distribute it. And in the natural sciences, we know that we can transform energy from one type to another. So the will may decide what form the energy is to take, but it cannot, nor does it need to create the energy. So it is.
Sometimes it takes a rainy day just to let you know everything's gonna be alright. I've been dreaming in the sun. Won't you wake me up, someone? I need a little peace of mind. Wake me from this dream that I've dreamed so many times. I need a little peace of mind. Oh, I need a little peace of mind. When you open up your life to the living, all things come spilling in on you, and you're flowing like a river, the changer and the change. You've got to spill some over, spill some over, spill some over all. Filling up and spilling over, it's an endless waterfall. Spilling up, filling over all. Filling up and spilling over, it's an endless waterfall. Filling up and spilling over all.
that was beautiful, Bradford. That was so pretty. I don't recognize that. Where'd that come from?
Chris Williamson.
All right.
Well,
that's-
it actually came from Nancy McAllister.
Well, good job, Nancy. Thank you, thank you. It's an old favorite of Nancy's. Yes. Good job. And it was really fitting for today. Thank you so much. Do they just get better and better? I just love it. You guys are awesome. And I want to say that really compliments your voice. So, and I love the duet you do in the beginning on the centering song. You know, it has been my, good morning, everybody. It has been my dream since, for almost 10 years when I first got here, to have a centering song that we would do every Sunday, because I just have this really crisp memory of when I was new in the teaching, the science of mind. And there was a guy that played the piano and his wife, and they did Vegas a lot. And they always started with their rendition of In This Very Room. And for me, that started Sunday morning. There was something that happened when those first few chords, and I don't know what you've done to spice up the guitar, but it's really good. Thank you, Rod. Thank you, Rod. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunday morning in the West Valley. I'm so happy for you to come join us. And before I actually begin speaking about what I came here to talk about today, I wanted to just remind you that if you are engaged with our community on a regular basis, you are invited to attend the business meeting that will follow. We'll be having the business meeting at 11:30 this morning. And you can only attend that by phone or on Zoom, because that's just for members. It's not for the public. And it helps us we have to have a quorum, and it will help us to fulfill the corporate requirements and our center's bylaws. So if you have not asked for that information and you're watching at home and you would like to be part of that, and we ask that you please do if you're a part of the community, it's important for us. It's not too late. Please call the office and just leave a message during the service, and then Cheryl or someone else will get back with you and give you the information so you can be part. We have some really fun things to talk about today. It's more than business. It's really quite, it's quite tending to the soul of the community is the way I like to think about it. So thanks for being here. And the title of my message this morning is the creative currents of thought. And I put a great deal of thought into creating a message that would coordinate nicely with us coming together as a community to also tend to the business that we will be doing later. And the quote that I used was taken from about the same chapter, anyhow, of the Science of Mind textbook in which Sue has done the reading from this morning. And here's the quote where I pulled the message, the title for the message this morning, and the theme I wanted to dive into. Dr. Holmes, my favorite metaphysician, said this: nothing should be allowed to pass into the creative currents of our thought. You know, we're all kind of responsible for what goes on in our own mind, right? Nothing should be allowed to pass into the creative currents of our thought until the will, that is your will, your ability to choose, make decisions, intend what's going to happen in your mind, until the will has first admitted it. The will must analyze, it must dissect, and then it must decide what it wishes the inner imagination to work on. And that is a beautiful, sort of a core message that gives us a strong foundation for everything we teach in relationship to the science of mind teaching, what religious science teaches. So there are a couple of strong points here that aren't regular. Didn't you find that was kind of an unusual thing to be reading about, the will? Because typically, whenever we talk in any form of new thought, when we speak about the will, we often are talking about the way we use affirmative prayer, the way we use maybe a 5-step spiritual mind treatment, Dr. Ernest Holmes liked to call it. Well, we made the 5 steps. He didn't do that. We augmented. He didn't do it good enough, apparently, so we made it a little bit better. But he created the methodology that we then interpreted into the 5 actual steps, which gives us a really solid way to teach affirmative prayer. But often when he would talk about the will, he would say that it's important for us to realize that prayer, affirmative prayer, spiritual maltreatment, however you look at it, is not about willing things into being. It is not about us using our willpower to sort of manipulate or force situations or things into coming into our life. It is, however, when we look at the way it is defined, the idea of will, we see that we are talking about the act of choice. And in fact, a formal definition, I did a little research here, is the metaphysical interpretation of will is not an execution of willpower, but it is a mental willingness to believe that the law responds to our word. In other words, there are spiritual laws in the universe in the same way there are natural laws like the force of gravity that are always working. And as we begin to be attentive to the way life works and the way that our spiritual life unfolds, we can then participate at a higher level. And what we understand is that there's an element of the divine that we call the law that is always in place, that is always responding to the way we put out our prayer requests. And so I love this gorgeous way it's offering us to have a willingness to believe that the law works, to believe that there are spiritual methods in place that are always working, and we want to participate in that because, well, I'll get into that in a minute. So there's a difference between the will of God, and that would be maybe a more traditional Christian way of talking about life and spiritual, even obedience, perhaps. We don't like obedience so much here. I'm not sure what that is. We're all rebels. We're all a little bit unique in our own. We honor our uniqueness in a profoundly apparent way often. But there's a difference between the will of God and the way we use our will to select our choices. So, I mean, think of it from a divine perspective, from the view of spirit and all the spiritual activity in the universe, all of creation. God doesn't have a limited group of choices like we do. So here, I mean, we really don't, but just in our human finiteness, it's difficult for us to understand what infinite is. You know, we talk about infinite possibilities, but typically when we come to a fork in the road, you know, as some place in our life where we have to make a decision, it looks like I can go that way or I can go that way. And so that would be true if you want to stay on a path that's well-worn. But the thing is, from the divine perspective, there's no limit to the directions and the opportunities for us to move through the conditions in our life and encounter the situations that are ours and decide what we want to do and how we want to maneuver through our very own life. So somebody wrote that God doesn't make choices, God announces. I like that. I like that idea. God just announces. So what do we know about God? God is, well, we all have different ideas about what God is. But there's this infiniteness that we consider the infinite intelligence of all the universe created everything, right? And so when we look at that, when we begin to study the way things sort of fit together in the universe, we see that there's this perfect order that's always desiring to manifest. And so when things go a little haywire in nature, nature just knows how to correct that. So there's an intelligence, a wisdom in all of nature that is always sort of self-correcting in order to reveal this pattern or this divine purpose, you might say. So in our human experience, we got a few choices, but we actually have way more choices in all of our situations. In fact, we have the choice to not choose if we so desire. We don't recommend that much. You want to be intentional in the way you interact with life. For spirit itself is always revealing greater and greater possibilities and always priming us for higher experiences of life and of how we interact with life. So our task is really to learn about this. That's what the spiritual path for me is. That's what Sunday mornings is all about for me, and all the education that we have such a gorgeous emphasis on in this teaching. It's that we are going to practice using our will or our God-given gift of making choices and in order to enhance our lives in greater and greater ways. Or we're always, as I like to say, and I said this was our theme last year, and boy, it was an interesting twist to have this be our theme in 2020, but to have a new vision, to not judge by appearances. See how useful that was last year. To not judge by appearances, but to see, as Ernest Holmes said, the theme quote we used was to see as God must see, right? In that greater way that perhaps we can't relate to all the time, and yet we know, I mean, in every faith, there's that idea of the omnis, something more powerful. There is a power for good in this universe. It's a power that's greater than I am, and I can use it, and you can use it. So I love that idea that we can use our imaginations in this creative way to expand what's possible by directing our will, by being conscious about the choices we make. So they say, and I believe Sue actually read this part, the imagination is creative, but our will is directive. So we use this idea of choice so that we can hang on to a mental view. We're trying to, we want to balance we want to pay attention to how we're thinking, because especially in a year such as we have been living in recent months, there are ways that our thoughts get away from us. And so whatever it is that we are thinking about, whatever current of thought that we have placed ourselves in, whether we have done that consciously or unconsciously, that current will carry us along. So our goal is to be awake enough to choose that and to look for and to anticipate finding that divine current so that we can move in union with all of those beautiful divine qualities. So once we make a choice, and then once we sort of chew on it, we think about it, we repeat it, and we ponder it again and again consciously, then what we're doing, that part is where we're convincing ourselves that that's a possibility for my life. So I'm living in this great upheaval when there's something major going on, let's say in the country. There's all this upheaval, but I still have as much access to the peace of God as I do when there's no upheaval going on in the country or in my family or anywhere. And so it's up to me to be able to find that current where that peace abides always. So we're learning how to use these natural skills so that we can be supported by a universe that desires to support us for the benefit of our individual well-being and therefore our collective well-being. So now if I look back at that opening quote, Nothing should be allowed to pass through those creative currents of my thought because I'm in charge here. And so I want to analyze and dissect what it is I'm thinking about so that I can decide and I can direct my will in a conscious, awake, and intentional way. Now, if I check in and I see that I'm worrying about one thing or another, and it's really useful to do that. That's why we talk about this every Sunday, right? So we can remember to check in. And now suddenly I'm worried about that something's not going to work out in a way that I want it to work out. What happens if those thoughts go unchecked? Our physical being begins to respond to that kind of thinking. And when we are afraid or worried or concerned, our thoughts begin to be thoughts that will protect us, will keep us safe in danger. You can see that it's very primal, right? It's all that primal fight or flight stuff. And one of my most important personal guiding quotes that I have carried through most of my adult life comes from A Course in Miracles, and it says something. I always paraphrase it a little bit different than it's read because I like my way better. Holmes did the same thing. I think it's perfectly okay. But my favorite quote is, or this gorgeous guiding quote is, "My safety lies in my defenselessness." Wow, that quote, I remember reading that for the first time and thinking, wow, therein lies my freedom. For me personally, I knew therein lies my freedom, and I had this great experience that I was reading that, and the Mormon missionaries knocked at my door, and I went, "Who's at the door?" Well, my safety lies in my defenselessness. I'm going to go see who's at the door. And I was so intrigued that they offered me a free Book of Mormon, which I always thought was a secret. But it's not, apparently. And they offered me the little home study, and I did it, and it was so beautiful to have that experience with, and I was very honest with them, like, okay, like, I'm not going to convert. I've already done fundamentalism, I've already been a good Christian, and now I'm exploring. I'm on this great adventure of exploring. And so I had that moment where we would be sitting and they had this little flip chart. It was so fun. And then we would say, "You did it a lot because you lived there. You lived in that region." And then they would be talking about something that I could feel I disagreed with. I think they're trying to talk me into believing that, and I don't agree with that. And you know how you can kind of feel the little hairs on the back of your neck start to stand up when you don't agree with somebody, and they're kind of backing you. You're feeling backed into a corner. And then God would so sweetly whisper in the silence of my mind, "My safety lies in my defenselessness." And it would just make me smile, and I could relax, and I just had such a beautiful encounter with these young men who became a dear part of my life. And it was in that way that they provided me an atmosphere to actually practice that quotation, that phrase, again and again in my own life till I felt safe, simply by noticing what I was thinking and changing the direction of my thought. So this is critical thinking. This is the analyzing and the dissecting that Holmes was talking about. I think that, I love the title of the message, the creative current of thought, because when I think of a current, it's easy for my mind to get an image of sitting next to a stream, So maybe you're gonna, I remember one time a bunch of us women were out up in that mountain place, Julie, and there was a creek, and we had to all go in different places and take our journals and write, and I sat on this bend of this creek, and I remember the stream of water sort of moving around me. So you can hear that movement. You can see that movement. And if a leaf should fall from a tree and land kind of in the middle of that current, the flow, that leaf could be carried quite a ways. You could witness that, right? But if the leaf falls on the side, it's gonna eventually get caught up on something. So there's something beautiful in that image that tells me, wow, that's That's a great way of thinking about that divine current, that creative current of life, and how we want to just get right in the middle of that and be supported by it and be moving in that great stream of the divine life. And when we study the movement of like airstreams or the Gulf Stream or the way the currents in the ocean have this tremendous movement. And close to shore, we have a different experience with currents. So what we see is that there are times that it's absolutely natural and normal for those currents to have upsets or things that could appear dangerous. And I was thinking of a riptide or an undertow. You know, I seem to be talking about the ocean a lot lately, don't I? It's such a great metaphor in so many ways. But a riptide can be a really scary thing if you're swimming at the ocean, even just playing at the shore. You know, we always watched our children so they didn't get sucked out. Because a riptide is what happens. It's a strong, unpredictable current that crosses over another current. So at the ocean, it can pull you out at sea. And you know what they teach you if you ever get stuck in a riptide? If, like, surfers know this. My husband's an old surfer. Right, honey? Oh, I left him at home today. They say that you don't want to fight the riptide. So your instinct is, holy cow, I'm getting sucked out into the ocean. And your instinct is to fight it. But they say that if you relax with it and let it pull you, you can work your way to a side, and then you will have the strength and the energy you need to get yourself safely back to shore. So what a good metaphor this is for the currents of thought that we all live in, right? You have a current of thought. Your current of thought this morning was all about music, right? I have a current of thought. My current of thought this morning had nothing to do with music. So I'm moving along in life in my current of thought, and you're moving along in your current of thought, and by our thoughts, we are creating the current and the direction that it's flowing in, because one thought leads to another thought. But more than that, there is the collective consciousness, the thought of all of us. It's just all kind of jumbled together. And for the last year or so, that collective consciousness of thought has been very chaotic and at times extremely scary. So there are things that happen in life, but what we always want to come back to is that there is a force in the universe that is greater than we are, and we can use it. There is a creative current of thought that is the God thought. And that current is always flowing, and it always has the best interest of all of life, not just humanity. And no matter what appears to be going on as other currents are crossing over and bumping into each other, what we know is that the current of God, that God thought, is steady. It does not deviate from its purpose. It is always on course. It is principled. It is powerful. It is creative, so that if something is ending, something else will bloom and sprout and become, because that's the way life works. It's always on purpose. So when our lives get chaotic, or we get in somebody else's stream of thought, which happens in families and politics and everything else, we can always get ourselves back into the divine current. That's why we meet every week and talk about the same stuff every week, because we want to remember it. Because, boy, you can get caught up and you can get pulled pretty far out into a deep sea if you are left alone without checking in and monitoring your own little mind. That's why we need each other. I think that's why we say we're never healed alone. we need each other for the squabbles, and then we heal the squabbles, and then we have new ideas, and we learn to be more directive in the way we move through our lives. So if we just took a moment to look at what's been going on in the world. In the past year, we have had to deal with some pretty big issues. Systemic racism, tremendous political divide, more than I remember in my life. We have been dealing every day with an ongoing pandemic, and all of us have been desiring to be on the other side of actually all of these things. So we're going through that, and what I want to point out is that we have strong opinions about, we have beliefs and opinions, and then we make choices based on our beliefs and our opinions. And so sometimes we feel threatened. We don't feel like our safety lies in our defenselessness because we feel like we have to defend what's going on in the world or else. And those are often times when we have drifted away from the spiritual current, which would help us be back. Because there's always that divine pattern that is unfolding in life toward a purpose, and God's purpose is always wholeness. It's always unity. So on the other side of the chaos or the riptide or the undertow that we feel like we're going through, we must remember from time to time that we can rest in God. We can just rest in God. Now, Reverend Clyde did the coolest thing. I love you. Where'd you go, Reverend Clyde? Hi, Reverend Clyde. I love you. Honey, I'm sorry. I love you more. But Reverend Clyde, you have made my life so amazing. And one of the great things Reverend Clyde did last week was he brought us the Vista Conference. So this is a CSL, Centers for Spiritual Living, has an annual meeting just like we do. And coincidentally, we have it about the same time of year as they do. And they take several days and they create workshops and they have music and keynote speakers and breakout groups. And it's a very fun experience. And several years ago, I don't know if it was, you think this is the second or third Vista we did, Reverend Clyde? It's the second time. So Vista is the virtual conference. So for forever and ever, Religious Science has had this annual business conference. We used to call it the Gathering. And it would move every winter from one part of the country to another part so that different people had to travel. It was, so it wasn't the same people traveling all the time across the country. And a couple years ago, they made a decision to have us travel only every other year, and it worked out. God's timing was very wonderful on this event, because a year ago in February, Clyde and I were in Denver. We have guests from Denver today. And then we came back, and then all of a sudden there was lockdown, and we couldn't meet anymore, and it was stunning to go from that great conference into lockdown, but we did that. And then this year we had the Vista. So this is the second time that Reverend Clyde has turned our sanctuary into a place where we could come and gather and watch the conference. This year is the first year we had it on the big screen, and he did everything. Thank you so much for doing that. Yeah, it's a huge commitment. Oh my goodness, he had to juggle he has a real job, Well, this is his real job, but he has another job that pays him better than we pay him, a lot better. And I'm grateful for that. But he did it all, and we set up here, and what that meant for me was that I got to see the majority of the conference from the comfort of this sanctuary, and did breakout groups, and it was just great fun. But here's what I want to tell you. There's been a strong emphasis for the past several years on diversity and inclusion. And they did a 3-part series that was on 3 different days. And and I watched them all. I was always intrigued with what's going on, what's the hot and the latest stuff going on. And on the last day, on Thursday, they had a panel of 4 or 5 ministers who are on the diversity committee. And they asked them each, why did you choose to be on this committee? And oh my goodness, that part alone brings me home. That part alone helps me feel comfortable in my community, even though we might not be doing it like anybody else is doing it, because I am pretty comfortable. We do the middle really well, and that's what I want to talk to you about, the middle. My favorite presenter of the entire conference was Reverend Masando Hiroka, and he is a good friend of Reverend Clyde's because Masando and Clyde went to ministerial school together, so you make lifelong friends, the people you bond with in school. And what I love about Masando is he's young, he's married, he and his wife both work at home office, but they are committed to, their home church is the Mile High CSL in Denver, Colorado. And he shared the most interesting piece of information I have ever heard. I have been thinking long and hard about how to do this well in my community. And he said something that I have not had the courage to say out loud myself, but because I'm going to quote him, I feel like it's okay. If you don't like it, you can blame him. But I do wish that I had thought of this first. And this is what he said. He said, it's been a turbulent year for all of us. It's been an extremely turbulent year. And here at Mile High, we realize how diverse we are. We have come to acknowledge that politically, we serve both blue and red. Now, here's the interesting piece. Is because we tend to be a liberal spiritual theology, and we have been inclusive for years. People have gathered in our sanctuaries because they feel accepted, because we're open to diversity and inclusion. But what happens sometimes is we forget that in our own communities, because our message is the most beautiful platform out there, nobody does a message like ours as good as we do, and I mean religious science, and possibly our cousins in Unity. They're not quite as good as us, maybe, but I obviously favor us. But what happens is, because we tend to desire to be open-hearted and compassionate and accept and love everybody, we work to be open at the top. Some people have assumed that we only attract liberal thinkers politically, and that is not true. That we have conservative and liberal thinkers in this room because the message appeals to everyone. It is not one-sided. So listen to what he said, and that's what I've been wanting to say for all year. So he said, so here's what we did. We acknowledged that politically, in Denver, Colorado, at the Mile High Center for Spiritual Living, we have both red and blue, and therefore, we developed a plan to help us maintain our unity, our oneness, this major theme that we all stand upon. And so, when we are under the roof of Centers for Spiritual Living, he goes on to say, we purpleize. We blend red and blue, and when you are under the roof of that sanctuary, he said, then we are intentional in creating conscious conversations with each other so that we don't accidentally say things that would hurt someone we love who thinks different than we do. Wow, that just touches my heart. So when you're purple, you're unified, you're blend. Can you see the ideas and the thoughts are blended and the differences don't matter? And so then I thought, poor people, like, I feel really bad for those of you who are in my life a lot. You come in my office and I have these drawings on my board that I've been working on for a year and a half or 2 years. I don't even know how long I've been doing this, but I have always, since Simon Sinek, if you haven't watched that video in a while on the Know Your Why, Simon Sinek gets to the whiteboard and he draws this bell curve. And so as we have moved through this pandemic and we've had different opinions about how we should behave and what that should look like, and then we move through the systemic racism and like, now what do we do with that? This is like, we're all so raw that it appeared worse than ever. And I would just say that this is nature's way. This is God revealing a higher way. You've got to get through the chaos to get to the middle part, to return to love, to return to God. And meanwhile, there will be loud voices on both sides. But here's what we forget. Most of us are in that bell curve in the middle. Most of us can stand in that place and we can observe, or as Jesus would say, do not judge by the appearances. We can observe what looks chaotic and see that in the mind of God, it is chaotic. It is the way we, humanity, the consciousness of humanity, desires to be reordered, and that we can then rise and be. And I love that this is the way you do it. A middle point. We can find that middle point. So I'm going to end this morning by reading you. I was able to find the transcript of one of the Super Bowl commercials. I think I saw 2 Super Bowl commercials. I was busy in my office through that whole football game, and I didn't even watch the halftime. And usually I do. But I walked through the room when this commercial came on, and I would say, this is God's timing. And it's a picture of, and I'm not going to talk about any of the controversy around it because I don't care. This to me is the most extraordinary statement that fits that idea of purpleizing our lives. So imagine there's just this picture of this rugged, may I say handsome? Yes. Sorry, honey, but yeah, handsome gentleman who is clearly a rancher. He's wearing his boots and he's got on his, his ranch clothes, his handsome ranch clothes. And he's standing out in nature, and you see the big mountains behind him and the fields where the cattle probably graze. And he says this: there's a chapel in Kansas standing on the exact center of the lower 48. It never closes. All are more than welcome to come and meet here in the middle. It's no secret the middle has been a hard place to get to lately, between red and blue, between servant and citizen, between our freedom and our fear. Now, fear has never been the best of who we are. And as for freedom, freedom belongs to all of us. It's what connects us, and we need that connection. We need the middle. We just have to remember that the very soil we stand on is common ground, so we can get there. We can make it to the mountaintop. We can make it through the desert, and we will cross this divide. I'm a minister in this teaching because this is the stuff I believe in. And this is the goal of what I'm always trying to communicate. But it's so urgent for us to see that it is beyond politics. We are not politicizing here. We are saying there is a current. It is creative. It is on purpose. It is principled. It is the place where love abides. In that current, you will always find peace. You can rest in God. In that current, we can see the beauty. We can have that compassion freely flowing no matter what the ends are speaking, even if we are one of the ends. So this is not a message asking you to walk the middle road and be mediocre. This is not that message. This is a message that says if you are called to that end or that end and you have a voice, then you need to use it. Because if you don't, you will perish. That's what it says in Scripture. But for the rest of us who don't hear that call, there is a middle place. And as we recognize we are a greater number of souls standing in that place of recognizing that divine call, we can be that place of balance while the chaos becomes chaotic in the way it is reordering everything, including how we think as the human race. In the middle, purple, open at the top, open to a new influx of divine information and infinite possibilities. We can be willing to move in that perfect harmony, steady and even. And we don't ever have to be afraid of an undertow or a riptide because we know our way out. And that's what I wanted to say today. And as always, things go better with prayer. So get yourself comfortable right where you're seated. I'm gonna pray us back. Or as one of my friends at the conference said the other day, I'm gonna pray us home. Whew. Shake it off. Just allow yourself to imagine that all the words and the ideas spoken are just falling around the room. And that here somewhere is a gem of truth that is just for you. So open your hand and reach out and take that gem and bring it to your heart and just breathe. I feel the love of God in this room. So powerful. For it is the activity of life itself. And so how good it is to remember again that there's simply no place where God is not. So God has to be right here in this sanctuary, in this very room. And that also means that God is sitting there in your living room or your bedroom, wherever you may be, if you are listening to this message remotely. That there is the fullness of spirit, the wisdom that we call forward as we create that space of opening in our own consciousness. And so I feel the love of God within me, and I know it is that same love that is being activated at the core of every human being listening to the sound of my voice right now. It is that divine quickening that stirs the inner movement of divinity. It awakens the DNA. It is from this place, this pure place of beauty, that the divinity in the cells and the tissue and the muscle and the blood flow in our bodies. It is the very thing that pulses our heart, that allows our lungs to breathe in and to breathe out. It is life itself. It sustains us always. And I know that as we speak to this force, that it becomes a healing, the revealing of a higher level of truth, a higher level of thinking, and that we are increasingly aware of the perfection that God desires to express through us and as us. So I feel the love of God, and I know that it is that stimulating way in which we become vessels. We become instruments for Spirit to use, that we can lay out our hands and say, Lord, concerning the work of my hands, command ye me. And that spirit in return answers and says, but child, these are my hands. Concerning my hands, you command me. Tell me what it is that you desire. What are the requests of your heart? And so we know that as we become pliable, that we use our imagination in a positive way and we direct our will into the current that is the will of God, that we create these infinite possibilities, that we are the future for the planet, that we are a part of that which is being reworked and reharmonized and re-energized in this beautiful and divine way. So yes, there is a healing going on right now. So anything that has frightened us, or any ailment that has concerned us, anywhere we have witnessed the COVID experience, where we have felt loved ones pass, we simply know that the fullness of God's love is right there, revealing even greater and greater truths. That it is the desire of the soul to be constantly expanding. For the expansion of life itself is always becoming. And so I feel that rich, abundant increase in life, and I give thanks for it. Grateful to know that this is the way life works, that there is a law that cares, that there is an element of God itself that is saying, yes, my child, yes, beloved, yes. Here are the gifts of the kingdom. We receive, we give thanks, and we stand in our truth so that we can be a part of creating a world that works for everyone. I say thank you, God. Thank you, life. Thank you, infinite spirit. How grateful we are together. And together we say, and so it is. Amen.
Oh, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful for all the love that I have. Everywhere I look and every face I see is love reflected, shining back to me. I just give thanks for all these simple things, the joy and peace that gratitude brings. That's why I'm grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful for all the love that I have.
I'm grateful for Reverend Karen. That was a beautiful, beautiful message today, so thank you so much. And also for grateful for the bad verse, of course, always. Anyway, so now is the time to go over our giving information. But before we do that, just a couple quick announcements. Again, if you and we want you to attend the business meeting, so if you're online, please call up at the center so we can make sure you have the information, so you can either dial in or view us on Zoom. And I also want to remind everybody, because I always forget to say this, because we don't pass the offering plate anymore. But in the back of the room and also in the bookstore area, we have black boxes back there, so we're not passing around the offering plate anymore, at least not right now, we're not. So when you exit, you can just drop your offering in the baskets after the business meeting in those black boxes. So, but I always forget to say that because, again, things are always changing around here, just like life.
Put their offering in before the business.
And you can put it in before and after if you like. To recognize the abundance of our community and the abundance of everyone's life right here, right now. So if you can say our giving affirmation with me. I live in a consciousness of good. Divine love blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God. So it is.
Please rise for our last song.
And so it is. Amen. Stick around. We're going to have a really exciting stuff to share with you. We're going to have a good time. Remember, pray often, love much this week. Thanks for being here.